Planning an event and wondering how you can give your attendees the best experience possible? Take advantage of customized meetings with Hilton that make it easier than ever to incorporate health, wellness, and great breaks. Hilton will help you build an extraordinary meeting that attendees will remember. To book your next meeting or event, go to meetings.hilton.com.
Are you a follower? Okay, so we're gonna probably add.
Welcome to GatherGeeks, a podcast by BizBash, the place where people passionate about meetings and events come together. Here are your hosts, BizBash CEO David Adler and Editor-in-Chief Beth Kormanik.
Hi, David.
Hey, Beth. Here we are, another GatherGeeks.
Today, our guest is Christie Cook of Art of Motion Events, a design and decor company for corporate and social events based in Durham, North Carolina. This conversation is about life in the trenches as a third-party planner and a small business owner. You get into it after a little digression about her past life and a different side of the events world, and that's working with Brent Michaels of the band Poison.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. But I thought that the interesting thing about this interview was that all around this nation in North America and probably around the world, these third-party planners are busy doing their businesses all over the place, that the language of events travels everywhere. And people are doing the same thing in these small markets and these big markets and around the entire globe. And I thought it would be interesting sort of to key in on what it's like to be a planner in a local market. And
the challenges that they face in terms of budget and in terms of having tough conversations with clients and finding the right venues and working with vendors and rentals and deciding whether you should have your own inventory. So a lot of those issues are things that
this is definitely a 101 for a small business owner, especially in probably one of the largest small businesses in the world, a third-party event planning.
Let's listen.
So, Christie, we're here in New York City. You've come in from Durham, North Carolina.
I did.
And I was very surprised on what a national footprint that you have, even though you're operating out of Durham, North Carolina.
Absolutely.
Tell us why Durham is the place that you're operating out of. And then we want to tell our audience about sort of like what makes a great formula for success as an event or an event planning company in a smaller market.
Right. So Durham, North Carolina is a great city, and that is where I was born and raised. And so that is where my base is. And I have just, found that formula that works to create a brand that can travel and go wherever. So we've taken our brand and we go with our clients no matter where that is. And I find that even if you're in a smaller market, that you can still set yourself up for success if you have the right formula to go with it.
And tell us, what does your company do? And is it typical of an event firm?
It is a little unique. So our company is a complete event design firm. We have a huge inventory of linens and chair covers and the things that an event firm would have. But we also have amazing creative floral designers, prop designers. We custom build whatever we need for our clients as well.
And how big is how do you say how big your company is in terms of people?
In terms of people, we watch our overhead. So we only have like 5 main people, but then I have a pool of people, and I build a team depending on what each case calls for. So if one case, if one particular client needs prop heavy things, then I pull in certain members to that team. So I build a team that's successful for each event. That keeps our overhead kind of low. It allows us to give the best return on investment, which is my key to my company, to my client.
And the quality of the talent in these local markets, how are you nurturing that to create these teams?
Oh, there are amazingly talented people in our area. And, as far as teams go, I'm big on team, and I try to lead by example, and I try to not ask my team members to do anything that I haven't or I wouldn't do. And I get down in the trenches and I work with them just as hard as they do. And I try to value them. I try to not micromanage them. I try to allow them to be creative while still, managing that process.
But there's fabricators, there's all these different types of people. Are they from the area doing other things and then moonlighting in the event side, or are they specifically on the event side of the equation?
They're specifically on the event side of the equation.
And
yes.
They get hired by other people to do when you're freelancing.
Some people that I have do, and then other people have their own thing and then just help me when they, when I need them.
So before we go into sort of like your secret sauce, you mentioned that you work for Bret Michaels, and I asked you if you were a roadie, and you said no.
I was not a roadie.
How did you turn working for Bret Michaels of Apprentice fame, if anyone doesn't know? You say who he is and all that.
Oh, yeah. Bret Michaels is an amazing human being, first of all, big philanthropist, does a lot of charity work, but his claim to fame is he was or is the lead singer of the rock group Poison. He also has a solo career. He won Celebrity Apprentice. Very smart business person.
Is he out of Durham?
Oh no, he lives in Phoenix.
In Phoenix.
Well, he has a couple of different houses, but he's based out of there.
So that's a separate world for you.
Yes.
And what did you learn from working for him that helped you into your business today? Because we're all about this long tape.
Absolutely. So I have a communications background. I went to school for radio and television broadcasting. And when I worked for Bret, I did a lot of things. I wore a lot of different hats, which taught me a lot about multitasking and getting to what's important first. And so for him, I did all of his video work. I produced several music videos that were on MTV and CMT and those type of things. I also wrote press releases for him. I wrote a cover article that was on Jet Set magazine for him. And I got to meet a lot of great people, including several people that own all the Hard Rock Hotel franchise. And I got to make a lot of connections and go to a lot of really cool events.
Okay, so take us behind the scenes of being in a rock group. Like, what was the weirdest thing that ever happened to you?
Well, I don't know the weirdest thing. There were a lot of. I've got a lot of stories, and they're all great. And I'll tell you that there's this meme that goes around on Facebook, and it says what people really think happens backstage and then what really happens backstage. And they're far different stories. It's a lot of hurry up and wait backstage. But one of the coolest events that I did, an interesting story that I did, I was actually at Bret's house with him, and he came in and asked me if I could stay an extra day and fly with him to Florida because he was meeting with some of the Hard Rock franchise people. So I was able to do that with him, and we were on the plane, and they started to say, I wish we had a guitar here so you could sing to us. And it turns out we had to make a pit stop in the plane, and we're in their private plane in Louisiana. And so they're like, oh, well, here, take this satellite phone and call down and see if you can get a guitar delivered to us to the airport. And I'm like, sure, no problem. So we couldn't get that. But what did happen was the owner of the airport actually took us to a pawn shop in Louisiana. So here I am with Bret Michaels, this amazing celebrity that's very well known. He's very recognizable, and a lot of people know him. He has 3 generations of fans, and a member of the Seminole tribe that owns all the Hard Rock hotels in the world, I think, except for Las Vegas. And we walk into this pawn shop in this little bitty town in Louisiana to buy a guitar, and you could see people in the store looking at him like, is that who I think it is? And, finally they asked him, and he's like, yes. And he's always so gracious. He's great to his fans. Doesn't matter how long it takes. If there's people waiting, he's going to meet them and greet them. And then on the flip side of that, the next day we went to the hospital in Florida, and this, 80-year-old lady who was the volunteer behind the counter recognized him when we went to the hospital to visit one of these, tribe's family members. And so it just goes to show you that he has such a broad reach, and I learned a lot about being gracious from him too. He's a very gracious person. So
in terms of, that you were basically learning, you were a storyteller then. I mean, you were a writer and you were a communicator.
Correct.
So how impactful is this storytelling on the way you do events now? Does it impact, do you think that it's important to have this communications background to be a good event or event planner?
I don't think it's necessary, but I definitely think that my background in communications, as well as everything that I've done, has led up to the way that I absolutely do events. I do tell a story when I do an event, and I think the key to a successful event from a client's perspective is listening to what they have to say and asking questions. And then we do a lot of corporate work. So getting that brand message across is extremely important a lot of times to my clients. And I'm able to do that, I think, through listening and through creative ways. When people walk into events that I do, I find that, or I think that a lot of times when people are going to these corporate meetings, they may go to 3 or 4 conferences a year. I don't want them to walk into one that I've helped produce and then say, oh, well, I saw this at the last 3 I went to. I want it to be eye-catching and different and dynamic.
People say that, not respectfully.
No, yes.
How do you do that? How do you really do that? How do you make that? Like, what really is different? Everyone says, I want something nobody else has.
Correct.
Right? Is that the number one thing you get?
You have to customize it. You have to be able to not walk through your warehouse and do what I call a party in a box, where you just, use what you have there and make it work. You have to make custom things. We did an event for instance, for Kurt Busch's 40th birthday party 2 weeks ago. It was a surprise. It was filmed for CMT television for an upcoming, an upcoming reality series that they're going to do on Racing Wives. And, we customized his bar. We had 9 days. We were given 9 days to plan this event. And it was at his house, in a tent. There was a lot of variables involved, but we hand painted. We took that logo and just put the logo everywhere, which I know that's not different, but it's talking about really customizing things and making things, producing things, having great prop designers that can make, what you have in your head come out, and pushing boundaries, not just being satisfied with, there's a lampshade with their logo on the table.
But, so is that, I kind of think too that is the secret sauce the fabrication world right now in terms of this? Like when you say personalize,
from the corporate world, I think it can and should be. I think that, I think when you go that extra step and that extra mile and you make something very branded for the clients, that they not only appreciate it, but they remember it. And that's what I want people to do when they leave. I want them to be talking about this event long after they've left.
So you told me about that. How do you deal with finding clients around the Durham area is one thing, because people underestimate the corporate clients in their own neighborhood, right?
Absolutely.
And how do you are you really working them? I would assume you're getting to know them. Is it because it's a small town and you get to know everybody that you sort of get this business? Or is it, of course you have the talent. I'm not saying you don't,
right? But
it's a different vibe than when you're in this jungle of New York City and everybody's coming in and, saying they can do it better.
That is absolutely true. And what I found is, and I think everybody would agree to this business is a relationship business. And you have to get to know these people, and you have to really make them understand how passionate. I'm very passionate about what I do. And I think that comes across. I get very excited when I talk to clients. Sometimes my head gets ahead and I'm spurting out ideas because my mind goes so crazy, and I love what I do and I'm very passionate about it. And a lot of clients locally in Durham, we're in the Triangle. So there's a lot of technology firms there. There's more firms moving in every day. The hotel industry in downtown Durham is just really, really booming. And in fact, to the point that they don't even have enough hospitality workers to fill those spots for those hotels. So the community colleges there are starting to add hospitality classes, but that's beside the point. But as far as making relationships, not all my clients are in Durham. I do have, a great relationship with Duke University. I have a great relationship with some really great clients there in Durham. But a lot of my clients too are outside of that space, that may have found me through word of mouth, or I may be in another city producing, and they come in and they see the uniqueness of our event and they're like, wow, this is really different. And I want something like this as well. So
one of the things you told me about that you travel a lot with your clients, and we were talking about how is that sort of the new trend. I noticed that some of our best clients, our best event organizers, are traveling around the world with our clients. Yeah. There's a certain familiarity, there's a certain ROI that you get because you know what they want and you can negotiate for them on the scene. What is the advantage to this? Why is this secret sauce also? We talked about fabrication as one thing, but now we're talking about traveling and sort of being their eyes and ears with them and advocating.
Correct. Well, I explain it to people like this. When I go on the scene with my clients, many of them I've worked with for years. I know what they like. I like what they don't like, but we also become boots on the ground for them. So I'm on conference calls for a lot of these events for months leading up with everybody else, the whole team, the hotel team, us, a DMC, if they're handling transportation or some other portion of the event. So when I get there and I see something, for instance, that I know is not supposed to be happening or it's not being set up right, I can alert them. They don't have to be, standing right there, versus them hiring a local DMC. Nothing wrong with that. But it's almost like having extra employees or extra members of your team. You know, I definitely have their back. They have mine. And I'll do whatever I consider when I go on site. I also support the local people there. You know, we've been very fortunate to work in Aruba and, you know, Banff, Canada, and all over. We've got events coming up in Spain. And when we go there, we support the local community. We have, of course, you know, utilizing wholesalers. We ship stuff in. We use local brokers.
But you bring your own stuff in from Durham, North Carolina.
We do.
To Banff, let's say, or wherever
Correct.
you go.
Yep.
But what is the advantage of that? And how do you sort of save your client money by doing that?
Absolutely. So with us, we own a tremendous amount of our product. And once you own it, you own it. So for instance, when I'm putting together, as you call the secret sauce or the, you know, the formula for what's going to work for this client, I see where when I take their budget, where I can, you know, put their money and where I can save them money with things maybe I already own. And so we can ship that kind of stuff in, and they get a much better value from us than a lot of times those
cheaper.
local.
I mean, are you recommending to people listening that if you're a local event planner, event planning firm in a local market, that you should create your own inventory, or is it better to go to an outside rental firm, or do both? I
think it depends. So, you know, I have places that I absolutely will rent a different kind of linen or whatever, but we own hundreds. And I think it just depends on the company, and we are very corporate. We are very corporate heavy. I would say 80% of our business is corporate versus social. We do social and we love social, but our brand is very corporate based. So for us, it worked perfectly. And that's how our formula works.
Okay. So go into a business owner head.
Right.
So I guess sometimes you can charge enough for a client to actually buy the stuff rather than rent it and then reuse it. Is that part of the business?
It's an investment.
But it's an investment, but you're also, just the cost of renting it means that you can actually buy it and then reuse it over and over again too, in some cases, right?
And you know, with us, exactly. With us, we have a lot of clients that obviously are year to year that we do every year. We do a huge conference every year for 1,000 people. And I know when I roll around to there, I know kind of what their budget's going to be. And I know that I'm going to have 100 tables and 100 linens or whatever. So as I'm putting together other events, I try to also start thinking about the events that I know I'm going to have later that year and what can cross over and would work good for both of those people. So that way, both of those clients are benefiting off of their budgets.
You continue to think in advance.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We're going to take a little break and come right back after this message from Hilton. So when's the big event? Hilton's here for planners with their exclusive customized meetings. Become a wow maker and save time by letting Hilton help you present an extraordinary event, one that leads to memorable and meaningful connections. Visit meetings.hilton.com and let Hilton help you. If in your business, as you're a planning,
right.
Where is this is advice to the other event organizers, third-party planners that are out there. Where are the margins in your business? What should you be heaving up on as advice to other people that are doing your type of business? Is it in the planning side of it? Is it in the rental side of it? Is it in the floral side of it? Where's the money, in a sense?
Correct. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So if, obviously my margins now are better than when I first started, because when I first started, it was a huge investment. So I was building that business and I was investing a lot more than I was profiting to begin with. Right. And obviously I started my business right before the 2008 recession. So that also
that's a great time to start.
It was awesome.
That actually is probably a great time because you're not going to waste any money and you survived.
That's exactly right. It learned me how, it taught me how to be very frugal and how to be very creative. I think all event people were creative during that time. And it was a struggle, but I'm glad I stuck with it because I love it. So, but for me now, I take every budget is completely customized depending on what their goal is. I try to find out what their main thing, is. Like, for instance, I have a conference coming up in Arizona. They have one night, obviously, that's more special than the rest of the nights. So I try to creatively use my inventory that I have for the 2 nights that weren't as important to them. And buy all, newer stuff and give them fresh stuff that they, specifically wanted for that first night. So that's how I use that budget. And that's how I utilize my inventory to help me do that.
Okay. Does that move on to your whole sort of planning strategy too?
Absolutely.
Does a corporate client like one really great thing and then the other things that are not as quality because they want to put the budget into one thing? Or is it they want it evenly quality everywhere?
I would say that each one is different. And I wouldn't say that the quality is any different. I would just say that,
the emphasis.
The emphasis and depending on what's important to them. And I try to be completely transparent and say, okay, if this is your important night, let's try to find some still really great stuff I own, but let's try to utilize that so that we can put the numbers of what I can spend in this budget after I take my margin of where I need to be out into this night.
Okay. So now let's talk about corporate versus social.
Yeah.
Like I always think that when you're a social planner, you have to also be a therapist.
Absolutely.
The corporate side's easier a little bit because it's not as emotional. Right?
I say that all the time. No, it's absolutely. And no offense. I love doing social events, but there is an emotional attachment to the money more, the budget more on, and the event itself on the social side.
Where is the time suck on the social side? Is it in the hand holding?
It is. Absolutely.
And at what point do you know that you have to be the hand holder? Like, where is the stress point in your opinion in terms of social?
So I'm able to tell the first time I meet with a client.
Okay, tell us.
I'm able to tell the first time I meet with a client, I can almost tell how much time they're going to take. How many, I just received a text right before I came in to hear from one of my creative designers who took a sample centerpiece, for instance, today about a wedding. And the client has now asked her to make another sample centerpiece to take to, the venue. That's a little bit of a special, situation.
That's normally is it normally that they want more choice and they want more, they're insecure about what's right?
Well, the way I see it is that a lot of times people plan most people, one or two fabulous social events in their lives. And most of those are weddings. A lot of them are weddings. And these people have been thinking, obviously, about this a very long time. And they don't want it. They want to get it right. They want it to be, just right. And I understand that. And we want it to be just right. But that is definitely the difference between the corporate side. Not that the corporate doesn't want it great, but they're able to not handhold as you don't have to handhold them quite as much. They're able to let go a little bit of, some of the finer details. Even though we look into that, they just trust us. They know that we're going to take care of that. Whereas with social people, they feel like, I want to know every single thing before it's going to happen, exactly the way it should be. And we're fine with that, but it does take more time. It's definitely a time suck.
I also assume that there's more angst over budget and price and things like
Absolutely.
that. Because people are like shell shocked at, this costs this much, I can do it, blah, blah, blah. Are you finding that they don't understand the pricing?
They sometimes they do. And I think it completely depends on the client. But more times than not, there is, a little bit of a shell shock, and when we send over proposals, we tell them this is a starting point. Obviously we can tweak it any way we need to go in terms of both design and budget. We try to work with our clients so that they feel completely comfortable with what they're spending. But we also try to explain to them that, you can get this much for this amount of money.
So as a business owner, what is your sort of pricing strategy? Is it cost plus? Is it retainer plus? How do you make it so that, there is a cost to everything.
There is a cost.
But how do you, what is the sort of the primary way of thinking about it today in terms of a small business in your market?
Correct. So everybody handles theirs differently. And I feel like I'm very unique in the way that I handle mine. I don't know that it's right or wrong, but it's the way it works for me. Usually what I do is I try to find out what that number is. Some people say they don't have a number. Everybody's got a number, because when you give them a number, they're like, oh no, that's not my number.
But are they usually underplaying their number?
I think sometimes that they just don't want to give you that number, but yeah. I don't know why. I don't know if they're afraid.
They think you're gonna take advantage of them or something.
Exactly. So, but if I can get to that number, what they don't understand is once I receive that number, if they'll be comfortable enough to give me that number, they actually get far more.
Oh, yeah.
Far more for their money, because because I own my stuff. So if there's something I've got that I can, help supplement to make their budget, to get them to what's important to them, is your linen more important to you than your centerpiece, or what is important to you? Is your ceremony setup more important to you than your reception setup? Then I try to find out all those things and then fine tune it with their budget, according to my inventory, how I can give them the best value. Does that make sense? And
do you itemize it out, or do you offer a retainer thing? I mean, what is the advice that you'd give to other people?
Absolutely. So when I give to my clients, once I find out what their number is, they get a vision board that shows exactly what they'll be getting based on their color choices, their flower preferences, their design choices. Everybody has a Pinterest page. They usually share that with us. So we go through and we make this vision board, and everything is itemized out.
It's itemized out, but there's one number for the event at the end. And does that change? Like, what about when they want to wildly change their course? How do you change? How does an event organizer, planner, tell them, okay, this is going to cost more money? Right.
Well, you say,
this is going to cost more money.
I say, I love that. I'm so excited about that design. Here's what you have to know. We're going to have to either back off on this or that, so you can accommodate that, or you're going to have to find more money.
How did you get good at that? Because I would assume early planners are trying to please so much that they get kind of screwed on the finances sometimes.
Sometimes you can, if you're not careful. And I certainly learned that lesson a lot early on. And at times I still learn it, but I feel like, again, I feel like it's a relationship business, and I feel like that you have to have your clients trust. And I think once they trust you, they know that you're not trying to, get over on them or whatever. A lot of our business comes, from word of mouth referrals. So I think that helps me a lot in that, I think they already know somebody that's used us, that trusts us, that had a great outcome.
We're going to return to the interview in just a moment. But if you're looking for a state-of-the-art learning management system, take a look at Digitel's newest platform, Opus DX. Opus DX offers a robust platform for event organizers and associations to manage content. For more information, email them at contactus@digitelinc.com, digitelinc.com, to learn more and schedule a demo. Now let's return to the interview. So what advice are you going to give to the person listening that's afraid of dealing with money? Like, do you have to just force yourself to say, okay, client, this is going to cost more money?
You have to. So I'll tell you a perfect example. I had a local planner contact me about some draping material that they wanted. They had gotten into a situation where they had a wedding last weekend. They contacted me on like Thursday. Do you have some extra, do you have some draping material? I'm like, yes. I was going to charge them very minimal amount, like a very minimal amount. And they're like, well, this is coming out of my pocket. And I said, why is it coming out of your pocket? And this planner was kind of a new planner. And she said, well, I got into this situation and I was just going to throw it in for them. And now they want something more than what I was just going to throw in. And they were afraid, exactly what you said, to say, this is going to cost more money. And that's exactly what I told her. I said, well, you have to let her know that this is what I agreed to throw in for you. And now that you want something different, there's going to be costs associated with that. I don't think that planner ended up doing that. It's a hard conversation sometimes to have.
Do you think that we need to have negotiating skills as a skill set for third-party planners? Because it seems like they're not usually comfortable with that side of the business.
Absolutely. You definitely, that's a key skill that you have to have when you're dealing with people, but you got to know how to do it too. And the right way to do it so that you don't come across like you're trying to take advantage of them, or that they don't have enough money and their event isn't going to be good enough. You have to explain to them, look, this is going to be great. And we're going to try to give you everything we can for the amount of the budget you have.
Let me go back to, like, you talked about how people know they like this part of an event or that part. If you go in the corporate side, when you talk to a client now, what is their number one priority?
From a corporate
side, and then we'll go to the social side. Is it the branding side? Is it what do they care about when you?
So, I think each one is different.
There must be some commonality.
But there is.
I'm trying to pull that out of you.
Yes, correct. I would say giving them an interactive element, right? I think right now something interactive, because most of these people are in a general session, all day, or a breakout or something like that. They want to give them something, really, really fun and interactive. We did an event for about 3,000 people in Vegas. It was a couple of years back, and we did this interactive. It was somewhat of a pub crawl, so we called it Pubs Around the World, and we created 4 distinct areas in the ballroom that were from different countries, and we had these great marquee signs that pointed when they came into each country, and then we had food and beverage in each one of those sections that was, relevant to that country. We had games also that were relevant to that country in that area, and so they were able to come in, they were able to relax, they didn't have to go off property, but they had a fun, interactive kind of evening that kind of, I think, recharged them and gave them something,
What did the brand get out of that? What did the brand get out? Why did they want it? They were just entertaining their guests properly, or is there an ROI around buying something, learning something, doing something?
So I think the return on investment for the corporate client in that respect is that people will enjoy the conference and want to come back. Okay. It's not just meeting after meeting after meeting, and it's something that they remember, and not that they don't remember their general session and their breakouts. I'm sure they remember that too, but it gives, it's something memorable that they can look forward to. We also did a game night for that same company for like 3,000 people. It was set up as a general session. We had 2 hours to turn it into complete, it's a complete game room, which we had 30 minutes left to spare, by the way. And it was awesome. They came in, there was lights, it was a lot of retro games, there was a lot of oversized games. We had girls walking around in brand colors with cigar boxes, but they were handing out fun little, tchotchkes that they could pick up and take. And it turned into a huge success and something that they still talk about.
How about, we just finished a project that we've been working on first impressions, on what is the first impression that somebody gets when they walk into a room or they go to an event. What is your sense of the value of a first impression? Or is the first impression everything, or is it just the beginning of everything?
Well, I think that's an interesting concept. So I think first impressions are extremely important. It's something that I talk to my clients about all the time. I believe that when you attend an evening event or any kind of event as part of a conference, if we're talking from a corporate world or really a social world, I believe the event begins as soon as they get into, that pre-function space for cocktails. And I think there needs to be an anticipation for what that night is going to be so they can get excited about it. We did an event, that was kind of a superhero kind of theme, Agents of Change. And we branded that entire conference the entire time. There was, cleans on the wall. They got superhero capes. We went into an actual recording studio and recorded a special audio piece that played as they were walking into from the pre-function space into there that was, calling them to, Agents of Change, you're needed, and it was an amazing experience. In fact, that conference won an award on that, because it was just branded all the way through. And I think that's something else that from the corporate side, when you're planning something, if you can take whatever that theme is and just immerse it the whole time, from everything, obviously from the collateral to the signage to what they're given at the registration desk to their evening events. I think it's a much more effective conference and people come away taking away more, just because they've been immersed into it. It's been, I hate to use the word experience, but it's been an experience. They haven't just shown up for an event.
And how do these experiences that you're creating, where is the Instagram piece of this? How much is designed for Instagram as opposed to just an event in your world now?
So Instagram is very important, and social media has a very powerful presence among attendees, there's interactive apps, obviously, that people are doing a lot now for the corporate things that can get the attendee involved and engaged and that kind of thing through the whole conference, which is very important. But I do believe that branding everything as you go through the whole event is extremely important, and that takeaway and, people taking pictures and Instagramming and hashtag, most of my conferences that I do have a custom hashtag and they can hashtag that and then other people see it. It's a very powerful medium.
But brand, my friends from the West Coast say that you got to be careful about brand throw up. That you cannot just do logos everywhere. That it's a nightmare.
No, you can't do logos everywhere. But there's ways to, if you have a really great conference theme, that you can carry through that whole.
Is that part of your storytelling? The theme. I mean, do you start with what's the first thing you put on the piece of paper?
So a lot of times I'll end up helping my clients come up with that entire theme. Not every one of them. Some of the clients that I work closest with have come to understand that it's beneficial to them when they involve me in that process, because it only helps the entire conference be better. I designed one which I ended up not producing because the event didn't happen, but it's taking people through. It was actually a New York theme where we turned the pre-function space into an actual subway, and we had people getting appetizers from the newspaper stands and newspaper boys handing out things, and then they had tickets as if they were going to an art opening for Andy Warhol, and then they go inside and it's like they're in an art gallery opening or whatever for Andy Warhol, and then at the end of the night after the awards, we turn that whole place into Studio 54 for the after party. And that's a progression of an event where you can take the client through that story, and they're going to leave there thinking a lot more about that than something that they just walk in and there's a beautiful centerpiece on the table.
Great. So we can't end this without talking about where you're from and Durham.
Absolutely.
And also, let's first start with barbecue style.
Yeah.
What do you like? What's your part of the world?
So I was born and raised in North Carolina,
right.
And so I'm definitely an Eastern North Carolina barbecue person.
And what does that mean to the people that don't understand?
That is the vinegar-based, not the tomato-based barbecue. So yes, that is.
And what's the advantage of the vinegar-based versus the tomato-based? Why do you hate the other side?
I don't hate the other. I'm just more used to, I guess the kind that I grew up with. I mean, obviously I've eaten the other and I like it, but I'm definitely a North Carolina Eastern barbecue girl.
Okay, so everybody that knows, does that ever influence your food choices at events?
No.
Okay, you're pretty neutral on all of that. And how is Durham now as an event place? The idea of doing in a small market where a corporation can come in and own the city.
They can. Durham is a great place right now. It has grown so great. So you have the classic hotels there that have been there forever that are amazing. And then you have some great, trendy, artsy new hotels that has just come in and, taken over the downtown area.
Why is that? What is going on down there that there's this, connoisseur sort of society that's happening that people want to produce quality with less cost?
Right. Well,
what is that?
I think that Durham has made several lists in the past few years on its growth and for its food. There's some amazing restaurants and food in Durham, North Carolina. Not just all
about barbecue.
Not just barbecue. Probably anything but barbecue.
I know, they don't want to go near barbecue.
But we have some great, in fact, the hotel industry has grown so much there. I was reading recently that they were struggling to actually find, the hospitality workers.
Yeah, you were mentioning that earlier.
So a lot of the local colleges are starting to add more hospitality classes for people to train those people up, because there's a lot of job opportunity, which is great for people that are interested in the industry and want to get in on the ground floor.
You don't need to be an Uber driver down there anymore. You can be in hospitality.
You can be, but you can be hospitality. The service there in Durham is just so great. It's a great service mindset. We have some great hotels, and it's really, really growing there. It's a great place to go to have an event. It's a great place to bring, conferences, meeting planners to see that city.
And it's got good lift, good airline.
It does. It's got RDU, International Airport, that's not too far away. Of course, we have, great universities there. I do a tremendous amount of work with Duke University.
Is it the whole Golden Triangle, the Triangle?
It's called the Triangle.
What's it called? The Triangle.
It's called the Triangle. Research Triangle.
Research Triangle.
Yeah, but we call it the Triangle.
The Triangle. And that education was the key to the development of this area.
Absolutely. There's a lot of technology firms there, in the Research Triangle Park. And, I definitely think, obviously, that plays a big part in the growth. And Durham's great. And I'm not saying that Raleigh's not great.
Of course.
Chapel Hill's not great.
We're not getting into that.
I just got to say, but Durham is great. We do a tremendous amount of work in Durham, as well as Raleigh and Chapel Hill as well. But it is a great area, has a lot of diversity, and it as you mentioned, it is a great place where a company can come in and literally get super great red carpet treatment.
When you're there, they know you're there, as opposed to when you come to these big markets. Yeah. You're like a little, pond in a pond, like a pebble in a pond.
Absolutely. Yeah, so it's great. We're seeing more and more of that there.
Okay, now that we're ending, let's tell everyone how they can get in touch with you.
Absolutely.
For both mentoring purposes, because it sounds like you'd be great for other event organizers or third-party planners around the country to call,
right?
I would assume, or connect.
Absolutely.
Because you have a lot of experience.
Absolutely. So they can reach me at our phone number. I guess I can tell that.
Whatever, I don't think you're going to get swamped.
Yeah, my cell phone number is 919-548-3847 that is the phone for our company. And then, of course, they can email me directly at Christie, Christie, at artofmotionevents.com.
And what's your website?
It is artofmotionevents.com. It's undergoing a rebranding right now. It'll be up in 2 weeks. So we're excited about that, getting a new, fresh look. And then you also have a Facebook page, which is Art of Motion Events.
Great. Well, thank you so much for giving us the insights of what it's like to be running a small business, but in a global sense.
Absolutely.
Thank you
so much.
Bye-bye.
David, I think one of the most important things that you touched on here was the discussion about money. You can't be afraid to talk to clients about money, what it costs, why it costs what it costs, and how to figure out where the budget should go.
No, I think that was a really, really good point. And if you notice, she was a bit afraid and timid to talk about money in the beginning of her career. And then once you get burned a couple times, you realize that you have to bring this up. You can't be afraid of talking about money. Yeah,
her example of the planner who was afraid to tell a client that a more expensive option was indeed more expensive, and she took it from her own fee. That was just almost heartbreaking. You can't put yourself out of business, and you have to be honest about costs.
And realistic. And you have to manage those client expectations. I mean, these are the same conversations that are happening in the biggest brands in the world and in the smallest companies in small towns.
Right. So today we're hearing about the event scene in Durham. And last year in our venues issue, we explored smaller market destinations and actually highlighted 25 such markets. And, maybe your attendees will appreciate a change of scenery. You head to Providence, Rhode Island instead of Boston, or Sedona instead of Scottsdale. And recently we published a story about how Adidas chose San Diego for a new music festival instead of LA. They wanted the scale. They wanted to make that huge splash in the smaller market. So I think this is a very on point discussion and things that people who are looking for destinations for their events are considering.
And you feel like you're more substantial when you're in a market that you're the only player in many cases, and that you feel like you own the town. So yes, there is a good argument for this. Right. I mean, it won't work for everybody. Nope. Sometimes you need that citywide event. You're only going to be able to take it to Orlando or Vegas, or, DC. So it doesn't always work, but you don't always have to go back to the same big cities. If you have that choice with the size of your group. The lesson is keep an open mind. Great. So, Beth, what else is going on at BizBash? We're falling into the September now, and the season is starting. Well, I'll keep the conversation on venues and destinations, because we have a wealth of coverage of new places to visit, where you should host your events on bizbash.com. So get inspired by that story on smaller markets, or use our directory to find the perfect venue for your event. So this is a huge resource for planners, so make sure you're using it. Fantastic. First of all, we want to thank everybody that worked on this podcast, including Claire Hoffman, who is our editorial director on the program, and Dave Nelson, who is our producer, and Rebecca Pappas, who is in charge of distributing it to all the points around the world so people can listen to this content. So now what do we say, Beth? Gather on. Gather on.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. We can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Player FM, Google Play, and Pocket Cast. Be sure to leave us a rating and review. It helps others discover the GatherGeeks podcast. We'd also love to hear from you. You can leave feedback on Twitter at GatherGeeks or leave us an email, gathergeeks@bizbash.com. We hope you join us again for the next episode of GatherGeeks. Until then, gather on.
Digitel is one of the leading companies for live streaming events, running corporate virtual events, or managed webinars. If you're looking to reach a worldwide market or generate revenue from adding a virtual component to your meetings and conferences, leverage Digitel's 33 years of experience in creating flawless online events. For more information, go to Digitel, DIGITELINC.com, or email them at contactus@digitel.com.